What's up, everyone? Kevin here from Skywatcher. Welcome to another episode of the What's Up Webcast. We do this every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, right here at the Skywatcher USA YouTube channel. We cover everything from what's up in the nighttime sky to equipment to helpful tips and tricks. And of course, at the end of the month, we have a special guest to talk about their specialty in the field of astronomy. If you like what you see here on the channel and you want to support us a little bit more, please go ahead, like, subscribe. It keeps us doing it. It lets us know we're doing a good job so we can keep having fun hanging out with you guys on Friday. So definitely appreciate that. If you want to stay up to date with what's going on, head over to skywatchusa.com. Up at the top, you can hit subscribe and save and join our email list. It keeps you up with everything that's going on, where Skywatcher's going to be, new products, all that kind of fun stuff there. First off, thank you all so much for hanging out with us last Friday, having Andrian on. She was an absolute pleasure to have on. It seems like a lot of you really enjoyed having her as a guest. We'll definitely try to have her back on in the future. But she was really great to talk to, and thanks to Anne and her team for making all of that possible. But yeah, so thanks for joining us on Friday. I really appreciate it. Okay, so before we get started here, if you want to support the channel a little bit more, you can head over to skywatcher.threadless.com. You can pick up some cool swag, all kinds of stuff there. All that supports the channel. Of course, you can always support Skywatcher by picking up a cool Skywatcher product. Our refractor sale is still going on, so you can get a crazy deal on some of these refractors. Some of them are already gone, it looks like. So EvoStar DX, Esprit 100s, stuff's disappearing, so get it while you can on here. And then, of course, oh, I meant to bring this up. Hold on just a second. Let me find it. There we go. NEAF. The Northeast Astronomy Forum is a month away, which is ridiculous. It's crazy how fast this is coming up. NEAF is going to be April 5th and 6th, Saturday and Sunday. And then NEAC, the imaging show this year, is actually after NEAF on Monday and Tuesday. We will be there. So stop by, say hi if you're going to be in the area. It's a amazing show. If you ever want to see any of the new stuff, this is really the event to go to, because there's just all kinds of stuff on display, all kinds of speakers. It should be a good time. So if you're going to be in the New York area, definitely come by. We've got a lot of new stuff to show. The Heliostars will be there for their first, real big expo. So you'll be able to check out the new Heliostar 76. We'll have a few of them out on display and for you to use, so we can just show you just how cool these things are. The new Wave accessories, the stainless steel tripod, the adapters, of course, the Wave mounts will be there. And then we have 4 new things that, off the top of my head, I think that's right. 4 new things that are not released yet. That are going to be announced for the first time at NEAF this year. So we're keeping that under wraps, but the samples are here. And we're excited to show you some new generation of Skywatcher that's coming. And yes, as our friend in the chat, it's also a great time to get TeleView eyepieces for a really screaming deal, among a bunch of other things. But NEAF is around the corner. We're a month away. Looking forward to seeing some of you there. Always happy to talk to you guys. You're always a lot of fun to hang out with. So we look forward to seeing some of you there. All right, so let's get started for what's up for the month. Again, this episode is pretty loose and relaxed. So if you have any questions on products or anything like that, throw them in the chat. This is a good episode for that. So let's start with the big bright thing in the sky, the moon. New moon. Wait, something... My dates are all mixed up. I was going through dates for this, and it's all kind of screwed up. So, oh, no, never mind. I'm sorry. I got this mixed up. So, new moon is March 29th. It is right around the corner. So, I'm sorry, not right around the corner. It's at the end of the month. There's too much with the moon going on right now, and I've got my dates in my head all mixed up. So, New moon for March is at the end of the month. That's the 29th. So your dark sky weekend is going to be at the very end of the month at the 29th and the 30th. So if you're planning an outing or a Messier marathon, maybe, that is going to be your dark sky weekend to go out and check all that stuff out without having any big golf ball in the sky. So yeah. Full moon is actually this coming week. That will be March 14th. And that's going to be the worm moon. That's the nickname for this. If you're ever doing a lot of outreach or doing fun stuff like that, you can go to farmersalmanac.com, and it has a bunch of awesome stuff on there, but it does tell you all the names and the folklore of all the full moons. It's just a fun little story to throw out to people if you're showing them the moon and you want to teach them some of the cultural stuff that goes on with the full moons and why they have these weird names and stuff like that. You can always head over there. It's got some fun stuff. The worm moon is the final full moon of winter, although here in Arizona, winter is a relative term because it really hasn't been that cold, although it's rainy today, which is a bit of a change. But it is the final full moon of winter. This is also where earthworms are starting to appear, thus the name the worm moon. So there you go. Question, does EvoStar 150 come in a huge case? Yes, it does. So not only do you get to buy your dream telescope, you also get to buy the coffin that it will bury you in. No, I'm just kidding. But yes, the EvoStar 150s, the ED versions, we don't sell the acromats here in the States, so I doubt the acromats overseas come with a case. But the EvoStar 150 DX, and if you can find the ED models here in North America or anywhere around the world, they come in a case, and it is a really large case. So be advised. So let's see. We do have a total lunar eclipse that's visible this month, and that is actually, it transitions through the middle of the night for much of us here in North America. So it starts on the 13th and then ends on the 14th. But this is a total lunar eclipse. It should be a very well-placed one, so the moon should get quite dark. Expect social media to be hammered with lunar eclipse pictures come the end of the week. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Let me bring this up here real quick. There we go. Here we go. So here is, you can always go to this website right here, eclipse.gsfc.nasa.gov. This is all eclipses that are visible, but you can go check that out. It's got a big old list of some of these, and you can go over and check this out. So the next big lunar eclipse that's coming up is this month. So it should be kind of fun there. During the, I cannot talk this morning. During the full moon. So that's coming up next week. Here in North America, which includes Canada, US, Mexico, and much of South America are going to get the entire total eclipse visible. So everything in this section right here at the little sun-looking thing, that is what will be visible. And then if you are in these regions that are slightly gray, you'll get some of it. And then our friends in India, China, Russia, Middle East, it won't be visible there. I'm sure there'll be others that are coming up. But for our region here in North America and South America, or the Americas, I should just say, very well placed. We'll be able to see the entire thing, which will be pretty neat to see. But it is going to span most of the night. So this is going to be a very late night eclipse, and it's on a weekday. So hooray. But that's coming up right around the corner. Make sure you've got all your stuff ready to go. And hopefully it's actually clear where you're at. Where I'm at, it's not looking great. So, oh well. So we do what we can. So that's some big exciting things that are happening with the moon. Planets. So everyone, I'm sure, has been asked by one person or another about the march of the planets. And yes, all the planets were up. They were all visible. to a certain extent. Many of us know Saturn is pretty much wiped out in the western sky right around where the sun's at. So that's been a stretch. But then you also, let me get this situated. There we go. But you do have Mercury hanging down there way low right now. I was able to grab that the other night. It's mostly lit, but Mercury is always a bit of a challenge to see. It's not the most exciting planet personally, although I do like it when it gets into a little phase like Venus does. And then just above that, which I'm sure you've obviously seen, is the planet Venus. Venus is getting into a very nice crescent. This is actually my favorite time to observe Venus, is when it's a crescent, because it's just very dramatic and it's not all wiped out and just like a creamy white ball. It actually has some cool look to it. So I really like when Venus gets into that crescent, but it's making that dive down towards the sun now. But it's still quite bright and easy to see naked eye right after the sun goes down. So you can always check that out as well. Let's see, carrying on with the planets. We do have the planet Uranus sitting really high, not far from the Pleiades. I think Neptune's hanging down here, or is that one gone? I can never remember where Neptune's at. But Uranus is hanging out not too far from the Pleiades, and just on the other side of it, almost equal distance, is the big bright planet Jupiter, which is naked eye, straight overhead practically once the sun goes down. Jupiter's in a very good place if you're into imaging or observing, very high up in the sky right now, so it's a good time to get out and start taking some views or images of that. And we'll have Jupiter for the next at least couple months at this point, so good time to get out and check it out. And then, of course, we do have Mars hanging up in Gemini, very prominent. It does have that rusty red color to it, and being right in the center of Gemini, you can really catch it pretty easily. I've viewed it a few times at various events. It's not bad. There is some dark regions that are visible. I've seen some clouds and ice caps. I believe that's what's there. Maybe they were cloud tops. I'm not sure, but there is some nice detail to be seen. That was at about 300 power though, so you're going to have to put some power on Mars to really get it to open up a little bit, because it's not ideally placed this year. It's not as good as it was a few years ago, but it's still interesting to look at, but it does take a little bit of magnification to help pull some of that detail out. If you want to add a little bit more, you could use like the Botter contrast booster or planetary filters to help pop some of that contrast out. So that's been really kind of interesting. I've actually been testing one of those Vernon scope diagonals we talked about, the gold coated one. I got one to try out. That makes a really cool difference on Jupiter and Mars for boosting the contrast and reducing the brightness a bit, so it makes it easier to observe. So that's been really interesting. But for Mars, I've noticed you really want to be in almost that 300 power range to really get it to pop. So, good luck in your endeavors to observe the planets. But there's a nice spread of planets up right now, all kinds of cool stuff to check out. So definitely worth getting out if you're doing it. It is definitely planet season. However, Saturn is basically done until it makes its pops out on the other side of the sun here in the next few weeks. So, whoops, there we go. But yeah, that is the planet. So plenty of stuff to see right now. Let's see, the sun. So the sun right now is really throwing out quite a performance. It's a little quiet this week, but it's changing all the time. So there's been some good activity up there. There was some really cool prominences this week. Again, it's changing every day. So if you got the right stuff, get out there and view. Obviously, now that we have our heliostars, here's a picture that was shot with the heliostar on a really good day. So we're really excited about the Heliostar 76 is coming out. The first batch, I think, is on its way. So if you have one on pre-order, they're going to start showing up here in the next few weeks. I would say once we get into like April, they're going to start popping up quite a bit. So we're about on target with the arrival times. that we were telling people with this. And I've had a chance to use a handful of these, and all of them have been really impressive. So that's been really exciting to see. Question, Evo Star 150 or Star Travel 150, what do you recommend? For what exactly? So an Evo Star 150, so it gets a little confusing. There are two versions of the Evo Star 150. There's the standard Acromat, which is a 6-inch f8 Acromat. Those are available, I believe, in Europe and elsewhere around the world. Celestron sells that scope here in the US as the C6R. And then there's obviously the Evo Star 150 DX, which we currently sell, which is an ED doublet, which is a very impressive refractor, both physically and also to view through. It's an impressive instrument, and it really doesn't weigh a lot. But then the Star Travel 150, I actually have one of those, and they're nice. But you really need to remember that the Star Travels are fast, short focal length acromats. So it really depends on what you want to do. Star Travels I would recommend for really wide field, cruising the Milky Way in dark skies. That's what they're used for. Terrible for planets. Lots of color on them. Lots of color on the moon. It's a fast acromat. That's what you get. The Evo Stars, depending on which we're talking about, if we're talking about just the standard acromat, they are better corrected because they're longer focal lengths. Still pretty lightweight, but they are going to show some chromatic aberration when observing the bright objects. If we're talking about an Evo Star 150 ED or a DX model, those two use the APO lenses. Very well color corrected, very sharp. You might get a little bit of color at the highest magnifications, but it's a very well corrected doublet. I have friends who use them for imaging, and they're very nice and lightweight. So I'm not sure which version you're actually asking, but they're very different animals. So it just depends on what you want. I would say the Evo Star is more general viewing. A Star Travel is strictly wide field. So hopefully that helps. Back to the sun. Let's see. Oh, there we go. So there's all kinds of stuff going on right now. You've got sunspots, prominences, filaments, active regions, imaging the sun. There's always something different to look at every day. You never know what's going to go on. There's a pretty nice, very thin little prominence yesterday that I was able to catch just going out and looking really quick. But if you ever want to know what's going on in the sun and maybe you can't get out there, you can always go to, where it is, Gong, G-O-N-G, and just H-alpha. I put it in there, and then it will take you to this page, which shows you all different observatories, but they're fairly up to date. You can see there's a huge prom. Of course there is, because it's rainy and cloudy here. So huge prominence up there today. Not a lot going on the disk right now. There's some active region sunspots right here. It's kind of a cool filament, like circle, like bullseye almost in the middle. Some little filaments here and there. But the surface is relatively quiet, but we have a really nice prominence down here on the bottom. So if you have a solar H-alpha filter, not a nighttime H-alpha filter, a solar one, or a dedicated solar telescope, it's a good time to get out and use it. If you just have a white light filter, it's a good time to look at the sunspots. The sun is very active, and actually the activity is always changing, and we're basically at solar max right now. So now is the time to actually get out and do some observing on the sun, because it's very impressive. Hopefully it wakes up a little bit more. It's been quite nice. This week's kind of quiet, but that doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. So, but pretty neat stuff that's always up there for you guys to check out. But as always, when you're observing the sun, please make sure you know what you're doing. Please make sure you are really up to date with the filters that you should be using and how to use your telescope safely. We have episodes that cover all the different types of solar filters, how they work, and what to expect from them. Those are fairly old episodes, but we have them in the library. So you can check those out if you're new to solar observing, or you can always talk to your favorite telescope vendor. and maybe they can help navigate you through what to look for when starting to get into observing the sun. So hopefully that is helpful. Meteor showers. So meteor showers, there's not any major meteor showers right now until we get into April. There's some little ones, but really there's nothing big right now until we jump into the April meteor showers at the moment. So question, what's a good magnification on the sun? I like to keep my I don't know the exact magnification because every scope is going to be different depending on focal length. Whatever gives you a nice, relaxed view of the entire disk of the sun. So like on a heliostar, I like using a 22 millimeter. That's about 29 power for that scope. It gives me the whole disk, nice contrast. It's easy to use. The heliostar is actually shipped with a pretty nice 20 millimeter, which gives you about 32 power. Also right about there. So I'd say probably about 30 power is what I tend to use. Let me do the math for some of my other scopes and see what that actually comes out to. Okay, so yeah, if I do the math on some of the scopes that I use for the sun, it seems like between 30 and 40 power is what I tend to aim for personally. I like seeing the entire disk. I like the view to be relaxed and being able to see all the detail at once. So that's usually if I'm doing like an outreach event, I'm usually probably running something between 20 and 30 millimeter on the eyepiece so I can see the whole sun with room to spare. So I find that works best for me. If you want to zoom in more, that's up to you. That all depends on the instrument and the conditions for the day and all of that. But just a roundabout thing, probably between 30 and 40x, somewhere in there, I find to be ideal. And if you're doing a hydrogen alpha setup, whether that's a telescope retrofitted with solar H-alpha filters or a dedicated solar telescope, I would recommend using the simplest eyepieces that you can find. I actually find that the best eyepieces that I've ever used for the sun are the TeleVue Plossls. They just have really good contrast. They're baffled really well, and they just handle the image really good. I like the way they render an image for the sun. I would say most people would probably be good somewhere with a 15, 20, or 25 Plossl. Although if you have like a Lunt 60, something in that 400, I think is what the focal length is on that. The 17.3 Delos or the 18.2 Delight from TeleVue I found to be pretty nice. But I find the sharpest images that I've seen have been done with TeleVue Plossls. You don't have to have TeleVues, but I feel like the baffling on them is really good. But a standard Plossl would probably be my biggest recommendation. You don't need to use some big exotic thing to find or observe the sun. There's a lot of glass in some of these telescopes, so reducing the amount of glass is it really does help give you a nice sharp image. So Plossls are a great way to go about it. Let's see, comets. So comets are always changing, and we can always go and check out what's up for comets. So let's head over to cometchasing.skyhound.com. They have a nice video every month that goes over the different comets that are available to observe. So let's see. There's not a lot of bright comets right now. So right here we have C2023A3. That's shining at about just under 12th magnitude in the morning. So you're going to need, as it says there, about a 6. It's better in a 16-inch, obviously. But right now, there's not a ton of stuff to look at for comets. There are things up there, but not a lot is going on right now. However, what I do like about this website is that it does bring comets that we should probably keep an eye on that could get interesting. So you can go here, check it out. There's all kinds of details in here about various comets and what to see. If you're heading out to dark sky sites, maybe you've got a bigger telescope, maybe track down some of these comets and see how they look. But there's always something up there to look at. Just every now and again, we luck out with a really nice naked eye comet like we did this past fall, which put on quite a show. But now we're kind of just back to your regularly scheduled programming. Let's see. Question: can we view and find planets during the day? Yes, you can. Venus is probably the easiest planet to see during the day. It is naked eye visible if you know exactly where to find it. But Venus is doable. I've done that during outreach events for schools during the day, so I have something besides the sun to look at. Did that last week. And you can see Venus with like a 3-inch refractor without much of a problem. And people just love seeing it. They think it's amazing they can see a planet during the day. You can see Jupiter during the day, although it's not naked eye. It's pretty challenging. So you'd have to have a mount that's pretty well aligned to be able to track that thing down. So Mercury you can do during the day. It's usually really close to the sun, so you just need to pay attention to its position, but it can be hard to see. Venus is the easiest. It's naked eye visible. If you know where to look and find it, you can actually see it, and then it's easier to get your telescope on target. Mars, I have done it. It's not great. Jupiter, again, done it. Not great. Saturn would be getting really challenging. So really you just have Mercury and ultimately Venus to work with. Let's see. Recently purchased a Wave 150i. Does anyone know if you need to check the reverse dev output after meridian flip? Checkbox and PhD. I am not sure. That's a good question. We are doing our Tech Talk with Alex next week. So that might be a good question for us to take a look into and answer. But I'm not sure. I'll have to look into that. All right, let's get on with it. Let's see. Deep sky targets. So we're in an interesting time right now because we're about to transition over to spring officially here in the Northern Hemisphere. That happens at the end of the month for March. So we're getting at the tail end of winter. So there's still plenty of wintertime objects to observe. A lot of the big popular wintertime objects are easy to take down right now. But we are moving our way into spring, which does bring a host of galaxies into the nighttime sky. So just starting out, we do have M1 that's in Taurus the Bull, about 6,500 light years away. M1 is a little tricky because it looks like a puffball if you're observing it, unless you're in dark skies and probably something with a little bit larger aperture, bigger than 12-inch. There's not a lot of detail visible in M1. You can try using like a UHC filter to pop out some of those tendrils that surround the nebula itself. The first time I ever saw those tendrils with my eye was with a friend's 28-inch Dob years ago. Very dark sky, very good transparency, and they were still relatively faint, but it was very cool to be able to see those little things. It's a lot easier now with a big scope and night vision. If you have access to that, it's really impressive. But ultimately, M1 isn't the most exciting object to see visually. Imaging, however, it's pretty easy to bring out some of the details there. I would recommend using some hydrogen alpha data to help pop some of those tendrils out around the nebula itself. They're very active in hydrogen. So give that a shot, see if it comes out. There is some O3 in there, but there's a lot of hydrogen ultimately. So see what you can get, experiment with it. But it's an interesting target. It is small. This is a cropped image from an Esprit 150, which is 1,000 millimeters, which is not short, but it's not long either, and it's still small. So if you have these little short telescopes that are out, M1 might be doable, but you might have to crop in to really get some detail out of it. But that's the Crab Nebula up in Taurus the Bull. Of course, you do have Pleiades. There's a stupid typo driving me nuts. So Taurus the Bull, I'm going to get rid of this. There we go. M45, this is 500 light years away. It's in Taurus the Bull. Many of us know this. It's a very easy target. You can see it naked eye most places. It's great in binoculars. So a nice set of binoculars is great. A small telescope is a really fun telescope to use on this. We did an event last week, and I needed an extra telescope because some of my friends weren't available. So we popped up another telescope. And I brought out the Takahashi FS60, which is this tiny little telescope. But it gave a really nice image of the Pleiades, nice and wide field. It's just a fun object to see. It's great for beginners. It's great for advanced. And then if you're imaging, again, very easy. But if you want to get the nice wispy details of the nebula, you really should be in darker skies, as there is no filter that really can help you with reflection nebulas like this. You really just need a very good sky, nice transparency to catch all of that. So that's M45 for you. We also have the Rosette Nebula, not far from the constellation of Orion. It's in the Monoceros, which is right next door, about 5,000 light years away. Now, this is a huge object. I think it's around 3 degrees field of view. It's quite large. So you would need a very wide or short focal length telescope to catch the entire thing with a big old sensor on the back. Again, this was shot with an Esprit 150 with a full frame sensor, and you can see it still clips it. So you would need something probably about 500 millimeter focal length with like a crop sensor, maybe full frame, even better, to catch all of it. But it's a very large object in the sky. There's a lot of structure in here, and it has multiple NGC designations depending on which detail. And if you're going after the star cluster in there, there's all kinds of stuff that the Rosette is actually compiled of or composed of. So it's not just one object here. It's a lot of different things going on that make up the Rosette, but it's a fun object to see. But wide field is what you're going for. Visually, if you're looking for it, there's a lot of hydrogen in this region. There's also a lot of O3. So a UHC filter would work. You could try an H beta. I have not actually tried it on the Rosette, but it should work, being that it's mostly hydrogen. A UHC would definitely help. I've done that. And then an O3 will probably change up the details that you're able to see. So don't be afraid to experiment with different filters. Of course, we're all familiar with the Orion Nebula M42, 1,600 light years away. You can see this almost anywhere. Obviously, the darker the skies, the more impressive this object gets. Photographically, there's all kinds of details that you can catch in here. You can do short exposures if you're just getting started and it looks good. You can do long exposures and start messing around with different filters. But there's so much detail in this region that it'll keep you busy for a while. But Orion, like I've said before, is also a great object to learn more advanced processing skills on as well, because when you start getting into imaging and you start shooting this object, you realize that it's very easy to blow out the center core of the nebula. So you need to be able to take long exposures for the faint little diffuse stuff floating all around, and then you need to take short exposures to get the core, and then you need to compile all of that and feather it into your data so it looks uniform, which is what this image here is. Orion can be as difficult or easy as you would like it to be. It's a great learning object because it's so easy to get a nice shot out of it, but you also have to take into consideration that there are some challenges when working in this region. So it's one of those things where I think everyone tries to shoot it every year just because it's fun and easy and it's got some really nice color and detail in it. But don't be afraid to experiment. It's a great object to learn on. Like I said earlier, visual, very, very easy. You can see it in any size optic. It doesn't take much to actually see the nebula. Darker skies will obviously help. UHC filters or O3 filters can really be your friend here. H-beta filters also add for a really interesting view of it. It just gives you different details than the other filters do. So don't be afraid to try and experiment different things with this object because it's so forgiving. Of course, my personal favorite for the winter is the Horsehead, right next door to Orion, 1,600 light years away. It is not nearly as easy to see this object visually. You really need to be in dark, transparent skies to see this. I would say at least an 8-inch, and an H-beta filter is going to be your best friend on this object to be able to bring out all that detail. And even then, it's quite challenging to be able to get all the details in there. So you definitely want to take your time when observing the Horsehead. I really like to do it in a daub, A, because the aperture is there, but B, I find the best way to see that it's in there is to slowly grab the telescope and move it side to side to see what moves with the star field, and you'll be able to see the black Horsehead actually move with it. But it blends in quite a bit, so it doesn't pop out suddenly at all. So it's a very challenging target. For as easy as it is, it's quite challenging visually. Imaging, on the other hand, it's a walk in the park. Throw a telescope over there and boom, you've got it. I've taken decent images with a sea star of this thing. It's not hard for the cameras to catch it. And with a lot of the modern cameras and modern telescopes that are out there, it's very easy. Now, getting a good picture of it, this is my favorite shot that I've ever done of the Horsehead, is a challenge. Making sure you get really good control of the bright star Alnitak, which is right here, which is a belt star of Orion. I mean, it's naked eye, easy naked eye. So having a well-baffled telescope to control the brightness of that star is a big deal. But there's so much rich detail in here that it's a very cool object. That's why I like it, because it's such a blend of, lots of subtle, wispy detail flowing through here. And if you have a telescope or optic with a large enough field of view, you can actually fit Orion and the Horsehead in the same frame, which is something I really like doing because it's just easy to do it. So oops. Next up, we have IC 2118. This is the Witch Head. Very challenging target visually. It's a reflection nebula. You just got to go for it and have nice, dark, transparent skies. That's all there is to it with this thing, is basically brute force to see it. You could probably do it with like a 6-inch telescope, really wide field. Again, like the Horsehead, go slow, move it side to side, and watch what subtle details move. I have done this on the larger daubs, but again, it really helps to slowly move it side to side so you can see what you're trying to see, and your eye will catch what is moving in the field of view. But it's a fun one to go after, but you probably have some challenge to it. Imaging wise, again, it's easier, but it's still challenging because it is a reflection nebula like the Pleiades. There's not really a filter that helps. If you want to do this, you need to go to dark skies, and it is a very large object. So having a wide field of view is ideal. Even like a 70 to 200 lens at 200 millimeter, great. I would say somewhere between 200 and 500, depending on the size of the sensor that's being used, is really what you need to aim for because it's a big chunk of the sky. But it's very cool. There's a lot of really delicate wisps in here. It's very elegant in its own way, but there's a lot of detail. I would also say that really good flats and calibration frames will be critical on this, because a lot of the detail that we're trying to see in the witch head is very subtle. And if you don't have good calibration frames and good flats, a lot of that will get lost in the frame. And you don't want to do that because you're spending all this time trying to bring out this really cool thing. So make sure you're doing good flats. Make sure you're doing good calibration frames like bias or darks, depending on what your camera needs. But it is a challenging target to do. Another one, Sharpless 308. This is the Dolphin Head Nebula way down in Canis Major. Really heavy O3 object. It's rather unique, actually. Dark skies, a nice O3 filter should take it down with some decent aperture. Imaging wise, though, dark skies, you can do this in town. It's very receptive to narrowband. As you can see, this is a bicolor image, so it's HA0303, or I think I did a hybrid blend of HA and O3 to give like a synthetic hydrogen beta channel. But lots of detail here. It does get pretty low for my latitude, which is about 33 degrees latitude north, 33 degrees north. It's not very high. I mean, it's higher than some objects are, but your window to observe this is thin. So it just doesn't get up that high. And the further north you go, the harder and harder it gets. So it has its own challenges depending on your region that you're at and how much time you actually have to dig into it. But it's very receptive to O3. There is some hydrogen in the region. Doing a bicolor image with HA03 works out really well. One-shot color should do it too, but you're going to really have to kind of pound away at it for the night, or as long as you can, to get out as much of the detail there. Next up, my favorite cluster, M46. This is in Canis Major, 5,000 light years away. This is dark sky-esque. The thing about this one, though, is that it does have a little planetary. There's actually two in the area. The little blue planetary in the view there. In a 10-inch, you could start to see it. An O3 filter should take it down. The cluster is pretty big, and if you're using a focal length that, kind of like a C11 or something like that, around 2,000 millimeters, the cluster gets pretty big. But the nebula starts to pop out as well. I remember seeing this in a 20-inch Obsession Dobsonian telescope and was kind of blown away with how large the object actually is. And then that planetary nebula is kind of like this little ghostly thing that's hiding amongst the stars. So it's a pretty cool one there. And then there's also a really tiny little red planetary right over here. It's hard to see. If you've shot this before, you might want to go back into your data and check it out. It's opposite the bright star over here. Little tiny red planetary, which is quite challenging to see. I tried this from a fairly dark sky about a year ago with my 28. It got nothing. And then I tried it with the same scope with the night vision and an H-alpha filter, and it was barely there. So this is a really difficult visual target. You might even need some assistance from some technology to get it. Imaging wise, it's probably in your frame if you've got it. It's very rich in hydrogen, so if you're doing hydrogen alpha, keep an eye out for it. It'll be this little red, puffball sitting off to the side there. But try to check that out. It's a pretty cool little Easter egg that's hiding amongst the cluster there. All right, it's about galaxy season, so we're going to start throwing galaxies in here. I just threw two in here just to kind of keep it short and sweet. First up, we have M106. This is in Canis Venactices, about 24 million light years away. It's a very nice spiral galaxy. There are some really cool red arms that are being whipped up by the black hole that's in the center of this galaxy. So if you're imaging it, throw some hydrogen alpha time on there and it'll help pop those little arms out. Visually, though, you're going to need dark skies. Probably about a 10-inch telescope will really give you a nice view of it, but it is a Messier object, so it should be fairly easy for you to catch in a smaller telescope. But if you want to see the structure and the detail, I'd probably say a 10-inch or larger. And don't be afraid to throw some magnification on it. Imaging, galaxies don't respond to really any kind of filter. Any filter you're going to be using is really to kind of mitigate any light pollution that might be entering the field and kind of help pop the background and give it more contrast, but reducing some of the glare and maybe gradients that you might get from some nearby light. But there's no filter that just helps with a galaxy. So you're kind of on your own with that. Like I said, you can get a little bit of help from light pollution filters, but that's mostly to help with the background, not the galaxy itself. And then, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to bring out those red arms that are near the core of the galaxy, throw some hydrogen alpha data in there if you're using a monochrome camera. Just put some time on there with the H alpha filter if you've got one. If you're doing a one-shot color, it's really just about, pounding away at the time when you've got it. You could probably do this at home, but dark skies are also obviously really helpful. So your mileage may vary, but it's a fun one to go after. And if you're doing a Messier marathon, you're doing it anyway. All right, the last one I've got here, image credit on this one is our good buddy Ron Brecher. This is M51, the Whirlpool Galaxy, which is kind of a staple for spring. It's on its way up right now, but you'll have to... I always find this, it's a really easy object to know where it's at, but I always have a heck of a time trying to get it in the view, even though I know exactly where it sits. It sits off the arm of the Big Dipper, but it's there, I promise. Dark skies are very helpful, especially if you want to throw magnification on it. If you really want to get those structures out of the spiral arms and the wispy dust and stuff, you really need dark skies and like larger aperture instruments. Imaging wise, you can shoot this from the backyard, but again, if you want some of those fainter wispies, you're going to need to be in dark skies where the light pollution isn't going to hinder a lot of that, because light pollution is going, when it adds gradients, because the light's over here and it's not evenly illuminating in the telescope, when you're trying to process a gradient out of an image, when there's these little delicate thin wisps, they can overwhelm it pretty quickly. So it can be difficult there. Also with this, you can use some hydrogen alpha detail in there and pop out those H2 regions. There's these little red gems that I see in there. That's what our buddy Ron did here. Just pop out some of those hydrogen regions. So Whirlpool's coming around. Pretty good stuff. Let's see. How do you suggest we get FITS images to you for Totem? They are too big to email. You might have to resize them and save them. We're going to have to figure out how we're going to deal with FITS and RAWs because they are quite cumbersome. I guess just rescale them if you can to a manageable size. And we'll talk about it with our team after this and see what the best way to go about that is. All right, target of the month. So here's the patch. We have not shipped any of the 2025 patches. We just got them. It took a little longer to get them. So I realized for January and February, if you have not received them yet, that's why it took longer to get these than we expected. They are here, so we're getting those done. We did just ship the December patches, so if you're waiting for your December patch, they're in the mail right now. You should be getting them this week. And then probably the 2025 set of patches will start going out here shortly now that we have them available. Our target for February was the Barnard Loop, this big chunk of a nebula that's up in Orion. I'll be really curious to see the pictures you guys sent over. I have to compile all that list so everyone can get their patches. So I'll be doing that right after we're done with this. So looking forward to seeing what you guys got out of that. And then March for our target of the month is going to be a little bit challenging. Image credit goes to our buddy Trevor at Astro Backyard. This is LDN 1622. So Trevor's picture here encompasses a couple different things. You have M78 right here, the Barnard Loop, and then this guy down here, the Boogeyman Nebula, LDN 1622, aka the Boogeyman Nebula, is the target for March, and there is time to get it. So it is a dark nebula, so good luck. We're trying to make these more challenging. Throw time on there. Try to get a good picture because we're still doing contests. So make sure you guys enter to win on that for this year. But yeah, that's pretty much it for March night skies. Real quick announcement. The time change happens this weekend, I believe. So next week, everything gets shifted back again. So just remember, it's 10 a.m. Pacific time for our What's Up webcast, but the time is going to change back. So starting, I believe, this Sunday is when that transition happens. So next week, we'll be back on that standard time once again. Here in Arizona, we don't even pay attention to it. The time just stays the same, but because it's Pacific time, everything shifts up an hour. So be aware of that for next week. Again, if you like what you see here, please go ahead and subscribe, leave a like on a video. It lets us know we're doing a good job and this content is something you're looking forward to. We're always looking for new ideas as well. So if you have an idea, email us at info@skywatchusa.com and title it What's Up. But yeah, that's pretty much it for March night skies. And then if you want to support the channel, like I said earlier, you can head over to skywatcher.threadless.com. You can pick up some cool swag. You can always head over to our website. We've got tons of stuff on sale. And then if you want to stop by and say hi, NEAF is a month away. So got some cool stuff we'll be showing there. So stop on by, say hi, and it'll be nice to see everyone there. So, but that's pretty much it. Thanks all for watching. I don't see any questions floating around. So thank you all for watching. Please have a great weekend. We'll be back next Friday with Alex doing another What's Up Tech Talk with Alex. So if you've got technical questions, we're already talking different topics, but if you've got questions, save them for next week and we'll be happy to cover those then. So, all right, everyone, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend and we will see you guys next week. Take care. Bye.